You see a red thing? Okay. My name is Edward McCullough. I'm what you would call an advanced technologist from aerospace. Worked in many fields. I've actually gotten into this issue of security and gun mayhem after watching what happened at Sandy Hook School in Newtown and what the conservatives in Congress did, how they worked to obstruct it and make sure nothing was done about it. And to me it was quite odd that we would have berserkers going into a school and gunning down 7-year-olds and then having a major political faction say that it's guns don't kill people, people kill people. That's their mantra. I've been working on figuring out how to deal with what are called arbovector diseases, like malaria and sleepy sickness. There are many of these diseases, and what's required is to take the insects out of the air to protect people from the insects so the insects can't actually get to them. And there are ways of doing that, and I've been working on using sound for that. I was looking at a way to actually use sound in order to take out berserkers with assault rifles who are, gunning up people and gunning down people in theaters, etc. And it finally occurred to me just recently that the cell phones that people have in their pockets are powerful enough and they have enough features that the cell phones themselves in large numbers can actually disable a berserker with an assault rifle. In order to do that, what's needed is something that can put out sound, something that has very accurate position information, something that can actually tell where it's been because it has an inertial sensor in it. And it needs to have processing power, and it needs to actually be able to connect up to other things that have processing power. So what we have in a typical smartphone is we have 2 processors at about 1.7 billion floating point operations per second. And taken together, that's 2.4 billion floating point operations per second. Now, there are hundreds of cell phones in a mall or a theater, etc. Not so much in schools, but we can do the equivalent by putting remotes in the school and on the walls, etc. That will give you this very same processing power if you had a couple of hundred cell phones in the area or in the classroom. So what that does for you is the cell phones can be very useful in putting into this gun mayhem in several different steps. It has to be done in phases. Step number 1, the cell phones can hear over their speakers. So when the cell phones hear something that sounds like a gunshot, and of course you have to make sure that it's not something in the movie, just the gunshot, but when the cell phones hear something that sounds like a gunshot, they have the processing capability to do a Fourier analysis of that sound and then give you the energy in each one of the frequency slots to be able to determine what kind of weapon it was that made that sound. They also have the capability, once they've been triggered that way, to store that information along with time-based information they have from the GPS satellites, so they can begin the process of figuring out where the gunshot came from. They can also open up pipes into the internet that are, dedicated, that will take them straight to a supercomputer, which means all of the smartphones in the theater would be talking to the supercomputer, feeding up time-based information and at exactly what time the sound was heard by each cell phone. This allows the computer, the supercomputer, to figure out where the person is with the weapon. Also, it gives the information as what kind of weapon it was. They also have the ability to contact the law enforcement people, give them the exact location of what the problem is, open up audio channels to law enforcement and first responders so that the people that are in the room can just pick up their phone and talk directly with the police. They don't have to dial anybody. This entire system, the way it works, requires no user action whatever, which means it's completely autonomous. The system will figure out where the shooter is, and there are some indications we might actually be able to get the cell phones to actually return fire acoustically within a second of the first shot. This is with the system as they are now. Later modifications, when you get your new cell phone every couple of years, will allow the cell phones to link to themselves and create a supercomputer right on the spot, meaning that they cooperate with each other. And if you have, say, 200 phones, you're approaching 1 trillion floating point operations per second as an on-the-spot supercomputer. What these things can do, especially since they're running so quickly, and if you're going to be working with 9 kilocycle sound, you have the ability to split the sound up into, say, 800,000 segments on a 9 kilocycle sine wave, and to be able to pick any one of those segments. That means that all the cell phones in the theater can phase themselves and all transmit the very same frequency, but it will add up right where the shooter is with enough energy to stun the shooter, to get him to put the weapon down. Taking a look at it so far, it looks as we might actually be able to get 100 watts into the actual shooter. Later on, we'll be able to improve that, especially with the modifications to the cell phones. Our problem is that the cell phone speakers only have about 2.4 watts peak power they can transmit before they begin to melt the voice coil on the speaker on the cell phone. And so we have to actually limit the energy out, the acoustic energy out on the cell phones, so that we don't damage the voice coil. Later iterations of this, once the cell phones are modified, we'll be able to put far more energy out in the acoustics. The cell phones themselves have 5 watt-hours worth of energy inside the battery. You don't need anywhere near as much energy to stop someone, either by stunning them, confusing them, making them dizzy, etc. But with further modifications of the cell phones, we'll be able to put a lot more than 2.4 watts out from each phone. But right now, that's what we're stuck with. And so this is a system that works many to one. The reason why I can protect people is there are many cell phones, and there's only one person that's the target for the cell phones to be incapacitated and stopped. The more cell phones you have, the better it works. The phones that can actually put out the acoustic wave to stun or make the person dizzy have to be within the theater or within the classroom or close to the place in the mall, for instance, where Gabriella Gifford was shot. But other cell phones can be used to be integrated into a supercomputer because they're connected to the phones in the theater with microwaves, which means any cell phone within, say, 200 yards could be integrated in to make this thing, this maybe like 2 teraflops worth of processing power. But for right now, we have to deal with the phones that are basically in the theater. Hopefully the cell phone manufacturers will sort out how to actually get phones to talk to other phones outside the theater. The first applications to at least inform law enforcement people, give them pertinent data in real time, and voice communication to anybody with a smartphone in the theater are just apps. You could probably expect to have apps like that on the market for free in 4 or 5 weeks as various people decide that they're going to actually join this effort to start helping out the people, the public, and then giving people more peace of mind that their children just aren't going to be slaughtered while Congress twiddles their thumbs or while the conservatives twiddle their thumbs. But in any case, we're working on this. what we're using is an outgrowth of technology that I was working on in order to solve problems with malaria and other diseases like that, set up by insects. And so you'll be hearing more about this and more clarification. My friends and I will write some white papers. Please spread this around virally. The parents of the children who have been pleading with Congress to do something need to know that there are some people in the country who are actually going to go off and do something about this and actually work towards putting an end to this gun mayhem. Thank you.